Hi, I'm Rob Hull, and this great amp is modeled after a Tweed 5F1 Champ, and today I'm going to show you how to build one. The first version of the Fender Champ was introduced in 1948. By 1958, the amp was 5 watts with an 8-inch speaker and filled with more tone than an amp its size could hold. From humble considerations as a beginner's amp, this amp has become a standard for great tone. This Tube Depot 5F1 amp kit is a great kit to complete in 1 or 2 evenings. But before we get started, a safety review. All tube amplifiers contain lethal voltages, often several hundred volts, which will leave burnt entrance and exit wounds and skin. In addition to burnt skin, these voltages can also cause permanent physical damage and death. Not only are these voltages present when the amp is turned on, but also for some time after the amp has been turned off. We want to stress that every piece of electronic equipment must be treated with respect. As with any construction project, there are certain tools and supplies that are recommended to complete the project. Please refer to the assembly manual for our recommended list of tools and supplies. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the back off. Alright, after you've got the back off, now you want to remove the handle off the top. Once you've got those parts removed, we're going to take a little piece of masking tape and we're going to lay it right along the center of the cutout. This is Appendix D1. It comes out of the manual. You want to fold it right along the line marked. Fold along this line. Once you fold it, you want to lay it on top of the cabinet, making sure the edges line up with the edge of the cabinet. The cabinet's got a little curve, so you got to make sure that you line up with the flat side. Go through the point where it says drill 3/16 inch. At this point here, you can reinstall your hardware. Once you've got all the bolts lined up in there, then you firmly press the speaker in place. Now once it's pressed in place, take your 4 nuts and put your nuts on. Alright, once you got the speaker in there, we're gonna prep the speaker cable, the wire, by putting a connector on one end, and at the other end I've prepped my other wires. I'm going to apply them on here. I'm going to put my negative wire on the negative, the black wire on the negative wire terminal, and the white wire on the positive terminal. Alright, we're going to install the shielding tape on the back of the panel right now. We're going to take our little 10-inch strip here, and this shielding tape will keep the noise out of the amp and keep the noise level down, as well as it provides some kind of heat protection for the board, because the amp does get hot. Alright, our next step now, we're going to start to assemble the printed circuit board. I'm using a printed circuit board because I like the way it's laid out. It's easy to solder, and it performs, in my opinion, as well as most other circuits. Especially with the way that I've laid this out. I've laid this out exactly like the original fiber board, so any kind of interactions between components are duplicated on the board. Well, now it's time to apply the wire to the board we just finished up. You can refer to your manual to know which grounds to put where. I'm going to measure each ground to be approximately 3 inches. Here's the completed board with the components mounted and the wires attached. Now we're just ready to mount it in the chassis. I'm going to take my center punch, I'm going to find my spot, and I'm going to punch the hole in it. Okay, now we have all the parts together, we've got our holes drilled, we're ready to start assembling some of the items inside the chassis. The first thing we'll start with is the power transformer, which is quite a lot of wires. Okay, once I've got that mounted, my next spot is I'm going to install my rubber grommets. With the output transformer, I'm going to mount it on these 2 holes in about the center of the chassis. Yellow, the green, and the black in this hole over here, the farthest one away from the power transformer. I'm going to put the red, the blue wires in the hole closest to the power transformer. The nice thing about these Keps nuts is they, once they get down to the bottom, they'll catch automatically. So you don't necessarily have to put a pair of pliers on either side, because it won't, once it starts to dig into that metal, it won't turn. On 4 and 5, these two have to be connected together. Here's where I've bent one terminal towards the other terminal and then bent the two terminals together so that there's one hole that goes through both of them. And you can see it right here. And with a little bit of luck, I should be able to mount the whole board inside here. There we go. That's that transformer. Take the 1 meg ohm resistor and we're going to make bends in it in each side like this. We're going to put it on this next jack. This jack is going to become input 1, which is the higher gain of them. I'll just lay it in there like that. Right here we're going to start installing things into the chassis. Now we have to put the board in first because otherwise you can't get the board in when you put all the jacks and stuff in. That one's good. That one's good. This, I'm going to, you'll note that this particular volume control needs to be centered a little. It just fits. And I'm going to apply my solder. I just got to feed it and just hope for the best. Yes, here we go. Maybe the other one's sticking out over here. And I used a red wire so we can identify it easily. Just solder it. Here's that first ground wire that's on the far side of the board. It's right underneath this largest cap. You see where I've got it soldered on there. I'm going to strip it back. There it is. Using those pliers, make a little loop in it. I'm going to pull it underneath my indicator lamp. And I'm going to clip it on that terminal. All right. I'm going to take the bulb out. Take the nut off the other side of it. A bit tight. It's got to stretch all the way over here to the on-off switch, and probably about right there is a good spot to pull off this jacket at. I'm going to go easily around it. It's going to go in here. I'm going to squeeze my wires like this, put it in. Alright, there's I'm tightening it in. So I'm going to lift this up a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to make sure that nut doesn't come undone. Because it's a plastic holder, it may have a tendency to get loose. So I'm going to take some fingernail polish and I'm going to drop it right here in the threads. I'm going to feed this underneath all these other ones. This volume control is also the on-off switch. Okay, there's one, a loop. Gosh, this is cool. It's the ground. When I'm mounting these components inside this chassis, I like to try to put the solder points on the top. Makes it a lot easier to get to them. This tough wire, it's thicker. There we go, there's pin 8 and pin 2, and I'm going to put little loops in these right here as well. I'll take my red wire, I'm going to go to pin 6 and 4. That's that one. Now the output transformer, the primary, is wired up. And pad G is going to go to pin 8 of the preamp tube socket. Right there. There. And solder to it. Look at that. Perfectly wound filament. Fine. I've twisted the two resistors together, the two leads, and then the opposite two leads I've bent like two little feet. Charlie Chapman feet. Solder the wire to the point where those two resistors are joined together. I start assembling it. These are my bolts go in for my chassis.